Well, Harry and Meghan's Netflix series, released to the world this morning, is packed with, well, not really revelations, are they? It's sort of rehashed old revelations with a new twist.
8 days after the relationship became public, I put out a statement calling out the racist undertones of articles and headlines that were written by the British press.
Piers Morgan isn't holding back, and this time, he's pulling receipts. In a bombshell new interview, he's tearing apart Meghan Markle's latest claims about her children and exposing the contradictions in Prince Harry's ever-changing narrative. With each revelation, the Sussexes' carefully crafted image is unraveling, leaving more questions than answers. How much of their story is built on truth, and how much is pure fabrication? As Morgan lays it all out, one thing becomes clear: the fairy tale is falling apart, piece by piece. The unraveling of Harry and Meghan, lies, hypocrisy, and royal fallout. Today, Harry and Meghan burn whatever remains of their ties with the royal family, and whatever remains of their credibility. Last week was filled with fawning praise, but this latest development is outright destructive. Prince Harry launches a public attack on his own brother, painting Prince William as aggressive and unsympathetic. He accuses his father, King Charles III, of lying. Even Queen Elizabeth II is not spared, with suggestions that she stood by and did nothing while he and Meghan were supposedly suffering. The royal family is portrayed as ruthless, willing to sacrifice its own members to protect itself. The pattern is clear: more interviews, more accusations, more damage. First, there was Oprah. Then came the Netflix series. Now it's another round of public complaints. The same narrative repeats: Harry and Meghan as the helpless victims, Britain and the monarchy as the villains. This is not just about grievances. It is a calculated effort to control the public narrative, an endless cycle of trickery, betrayal, and self-pity. Meghan claims the backlash started because she called out racism within the monarchy. But look at the timeline. Before she made those claims, the media was largely supportive. So what changed? It wasn't race, it was hypocrisy. The turning point was the extravagant New York baby shower, reportedly costing $500,000, followed by private jet flights while lecturing the world on climate change. It was the contradiction between their messages of poverty and social justice and their lavish lifestyle. The criticism intensified when Meghan and Harry positioned themselves as moral authorities while making choices that directly contradicted the values they preached. Then there is her father, Thomas Markle. Many found her treatment of him shockingly cold. His public mistakes aside, he was discarded completely. Harry has never even met his father-in-law, despite proposing to Meghan, knowing the challenges that would come with it. There was no attempt to mend the relationship. He was simply cast aside. The couple speaks about compassion as a core value, yet they ignore a man in poor health who only wishes to meet his grandchildren. The issue of their royal status remains a point of contention. Despite stepping away from royal duties, Harry and Meghan continue to trade on their titles. Official documents still bear the office of the Duchess of Sussex. Meghan even refers to herself as a princess in interviews, claiming little girls look up to her as a real-life fairy tale figure. But she is not a princess, and she never was. They deliberately use these titles to maintain their marketability, securing multi-million-dollar deals while insisting they want to live privately. Their relevance is not built on accomplishments, but on their continuous attacks on the royal family. Without this ongoing feud, there is little left to sustain their public interest. Their so-called activism and motivational messages do not generate the same attention. The question remains: how long can they keep this up? At what point does King Charles say enough is enough? Can he allow them to profit from royal connections while constantly undermining the institution? Would stripping them of their titles even make a difference at this stage? This situation is far from over. The damage they have done to the monarchy is significant, but the bigger question is how much longer they can remain relevant. The controversy fuels their brand, but even public patience has limits. How does this end? Stay tuned to find out. Exploiting Princess Diana's legacy. One of the most unsettling aspects of this entire spectacle is the relentless use of Princess Diana's memory to generate sympathy for Meghan Markle. Harry claims, "So much of what Meghan is and how she is so similar to my mom." She has the same compassion, she has the same empathy, she has the same confidence. She has this warmth about her. The comparison is as deliberate as it is manipulative. Meghan is portrayed as the second coming of Diana, a modern-day princess wronged by the royal family, hounded by the press, and in need of protection. But how much of this is reality? And how much is carefully constructed myth? Harry insists he walked away from royal life to protect his family. Yet nothing says protection quite like exposing your children in a high-profile Netflix documentary, does it? The contradiction is glaring. Privacy was their battle cry, yet here they are, sharing intimate details of their lives with the entire world. And then there's the issue of Meghan's so-called compassion. Diana was known for her warmth, her unwavering kindness, and her dedication to causes beyond herself. Meghan, on the other hand, preaches about love and empathy, but struggles to extend it to those closest to her. Where was her compassion when her father, Thomas Markle, suffered a stroke just months ago?
Meghan Markle's father, Thomas, a friend of the show, has suffered a major stroke.
A man who raised her for years, supported her ambitions, and sacrificed for her success. No phone call, no visit, nothing. The same father she cut off completely, just as she distanced herself from nearly everyone who had been in her life before fame. And Harry, the man so devoted to understanding suffering, has never even met his own father-in-law, a man who lives just 70 miles away, barely an hour's drive, a man who has never laid eyes on his grandchildren. Yet, somehow, this couple expects the world to believe in their deep sense of love, connection, and compassion. Thomas Markle's story is absent from their narrative, carefully omitted, buried, because it doesn't fit the image they want to project.
Harry's invited to come down anytime he wants by himself, or Meghan's invited to come down anytime she wants by herself or with Harry.
It is this kind of selective storytelling that makes the entire spectacle feel disingenuous. The rewriting of history, the cherry-picking of facts, the relentless self-victimization, while ignoring the suffering of those left in their wake. If the goal was to convince the world of their truth, perhaps they should have started by acknowledging the truths they chose to ignore. The privacy paradox, when secrecy becomes spectacle. There's an undeniable irony in watching a documentary so drenched in contradictions that it almost plays like satire. It's a carefully orchestrated production, one that claims to expose intrusion and victimhood, yet collapses under the weight of its own hypocrisy. The world was told a dramatic tale of escape, a royal couple forced to flee the suffocating grasp of a ruthless press, all in the name of privacy. And yet, long before their multi-million-dollar Netflix deal was ever made public, Harry and Meghan were already documenting their so-called struggles, carefully curating their narrative as if anticipating the moment they would unveil it to the world. This wasn't just an impromptu tell-all. It was a project months, if not years, in the making. They spoke of seeking refuge from the media storm, but the reality? They had willingly stepped into the eye of it. The timing was striking, while the world grappled with a deadly pandemic, with lives being lost by the thousands. Their focus remained fixed on themselves, on their grievances, on ensuring their story reached an audience of millions. And what a story it was! "We had to flee for the sake of our family's privacy," Harry solemnly declares, against the backdrop of intimate family footage, childhood videos of their children, and even private text messages displayed for public consumption. Privacy, it seems, is an adaptable concept when there's a $100 million paycheck involved. But where was this relentless press harassment they so often decry? Viewers tuning in expecting to see undeniable proof of media intrusion were instead met with selective images and misleading visuals, some of which had absolutely nothing to do with them. Take the dramatic shot of photographers swarming for a picture. It was framed as evidence of their torment, a symbol of the unrelenting pressure they faced.
That we were going to, sadly, be stepping back, not stepping down, but to just have a reduced role.
The truth? That photo was from a Harry Potter movie premiere, 5 years before Harry had even met Meghan. Another image, supposedly capturing a sneaky photographer lurking above them, was later revealed to be a perfectly ordinary invited member of the press documenting their meeting with Archbishop Tutu in Cape Town.
In those situations where you could tough luck, it's not my fault.
And that breathless chase scene, the one depicting an aggressive press hounding their every move, the cameras weren't even pointed at them. The footage was from an entirely different event, where paparazzi were actually following reality TV star Katie Price outside Crawley Magistrates Court. For a couple that has taken multiple legal actions against media outlets for misrepresenting the truth, they seem remarkably comfortable doing exactly the same. Yet perhaps the most shocking revelation of all isn't the distortion of events. It's the sheer dullness of it. The entire documentary plays like an overextended version of every grievance they've ever aired. The same tired complaints, the same sweeping declarations of injustice, the same melodramatic retellings of their supposed struggles. But what grand revelation do they offer? What dark conspiracy are they exposing? None, because there is no grand conspiracy, just two people determined to rebrand themselves, swapping palace protocols for the neatly scripted theatrics of Hollywood-style reality television. They claim they walked away from royal life for privacy. They insist they left behind the scrutiny of Great Britain for the peaceful anonymity of California. And yet, since their departure, they've done everything in their power to remain in the public eye. A quiet life? Only if one ignores the multi-million-dollar book deals, the lucrative Silicon Valley partnerships, the self-righteous wellness talks, the podcast empire, the high-profile interviews with Oprah Winfrey, James Corden, and any other media platform willing to hand them a microphone. And now, as the world watches their glossy, overproduced, reality-style documentary, the irony couldn't be clearer. Nothing screams protecting one's family from public intrusion quite like inviting millions to witness every carefully staged moment of your life. But what happens when the spotlight dims? Can they sustain their brand? Or is the facade starting to crack? Stay tuned. The Royal Rift, Harry, Meghan, and the Crown. These are not the values one would expect from individuals of integrity. Meghan Markle has openly portrayed Britain as a racist nation and accused the monarchy of harboring deep-seated prejudice. But does she truly believe this? Or is she acutely aware of the narrative she is crafting? Her approach appears calculated, fueling racial tensions without providing concrete proof. If she cannot substantiate such claims, then it raises the question: is she exploiting the issue of racism for personal gain, using it as both a shield against criticism and a tool to establish her brand as a professional victim? At the heart of their influence lies a contradiction. Harry and Meghan claim they left royal life behind in pursuit of privacy and independence, yet they continue to benefit from the very institution they have spent years criticizing. Their royal titles, Duke and Duchess of Sussex, remain attached to their names, despite the fact that they have spent more time in Hollywood than in Sussex. These titles, bestowed upon them as symbols of royal duty, have instead become lucrative assets in their pursuit of wealth and global attention. How long will this continue? At what point does King Charles intervene and put an end to it? Stripping them of their titles would be an extraordinary move, one without modern precedent. But is it entirely out of the question? The king has shown patience, perhaps hoping that the storm will pass on its own. But how much longer can the monarchy tolerate a situation where two individuals who have distanced themselves from their responsibilities continue to exploit their royal connection? Some argue that removing their titles would make little difference. Even without them, Harry and Meghan's fame is already secured. Their brand no longer depends on their official roles within the royal family. It thrives on controversy, driven by an ongoing narrative of victimhood. Their multi-million-pound deals, media appearances, and carefully crafted public statements keep them at the center of attention, ensuring that their grievances against the monarchy remain their most valuable currency. Yet, Despite claiming independence from the institution, they continue to act as though they are still deeply connected to it. Official documents, letterheads, and business dealings still bear the name, the Office of the Duchess of Sussex, reinforcing the idea that Meghan remains tied to royalty. On a podcast, she even referred to herself as a princess, telling young girls that she serves as an inspiration to them. But she was never given the title of princess. This is a self-created illusion, one that conveniently keeps public interest alive. Because in the end, what is the real draw? Their activism? Their Hollywood ventures? Their speeches about mental health and social justice? Or is it their never-ending conflict with the royal family? Their most powerful asset is not their charitable work or their business initiatives. It is their ability to keep the world captivated by their ongoing feud, painting themselves as victims of a system they claim to have escaped. This leaves King Charles with a dilemma. The monarchy has endured for centuries by balancing tradition with evolution. Will he decide to formally sever ties, cutting off the last remnants of their royal influence? Or will he allow this contradiction to continue, where Harry and Meghan exist in a paradox, both rejecting the monarchy and profiting from it? Keep watching. The many versions of truth, Harry and Meghan's narrative. Let's take a closer look at the difference between what they claim and what actually happened. One of Meghan's most emotional revelations was that royal advisors forced her to exclude her beloved niece, Ashley, from her wedding, a decision that supposedly caused her great distress. Meghan explained it this way.
And she and I just started, I was on Suits at the time, so I'd say, let's go on vacations.
How do we explain that this half-sister isn't invited to the wedding, but that the half-sister's daughter is? According to her, the royal family's guidance was clear. The advice at the time was to not have her come to our wedding. But here's the problem. That never happened. Reliable sources within the palace have confirmed that no such guidance was ever given. In reality, Ashley's exclusion was Meghan's choice, not some royal directive. Yet, this story was presented as a key example of Meghan's deep love for her family. So deep that the only relative she allowed at her wedding was her mother. Even Ashley, the one relative she seemed to care about, was absent. But that's not the only questionable claim Meghan has made. She insists that when she joined the royal family,
I need to do this for my family. This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point.
she was given no guidance on protocol and had to learn everything on her own, describing her experience as baptism by fire. Joining this family, I knew that there was a protocol for how things were done, she said. But there's no class where someone says, sit like this, cross your legs like this, use this fork, don't do this curtsy, then wear this kind of hat. That doesn't happen. Yet this too is far from the truth. The Sunday Times uncovered that Meghan had, in fact, been provided with a detailed 30-point dossier filled with information and contacts to help her adjust to royal life. There was no expectation that she would just figure it out on her own, but acknowledging that wouldn't fit the narrative of struggle and isolation. Meghan also claimed that she avoided bright colors while in the royal family out of respect, ensuring she didn't overshadow senior royals. What's a color they'll probably never wear? Camel? Beige? White? So I wore a lot of muted tones, but it also was so I could just blend in, like I'm not trying to stand out here. Yet a quick glance at photographs taken during her time as a working royal tells a different story. Meghan was frequently seen wearing vibrant shades, reds, blues, greens, and even eye-catching yellows. The notion that she was deliberately dressing in dull colors to stay in the background simply doesn't hold up. Even the documentary's opening scene included another misleading claim, that Buckingham Palace refused to comment on the series. But the truth? The palace received just one vague email from an unknown production company, and when officials tried to verify its legitimacy, their efforts were ignored. In other words, the palace didn't decline to comment. They weren't even given a fair chance to respond. Then there's the story of how Harry and Meghan first met. When speaking to the BBC in 2017, they insisted that they were introduced by a mutual friend on a blind date. Years later, their Netflix series told a different version. This time, they met on Instagram. Which is it? And what about the night Harry proposed? Meghan painted a picture of an intimate and simple moment. It happened a few weeks ago, earlier this month, here at our cottage. A standard, typical night for us. Cozy night. What were we doing? Just roasting chicken. Trying to roast a chicken. It was just an amazing surprise. It was so sweet. Except, according to their own documentary, the proposal was far from ordinary. Instead of a quiet evening indoors, it was a grand candlelit event in their walled garden. Not only that, but Meghan had already figured out what was coming, and even shared the details with a friend before Harry officially proposed. So, was it an amazing surprise, or was it a well-planned spectacle? Then there was Meghan's infamous claim that she and Harry had secretly married 3 days before their grand televised wedding. According to her, the Archbishop of Canterbury had conducted a private ceremony just for them in their backyard. But there was just one problem with that story. It wasn't true. Had such an event actually taken place, it would have been illegal, and the Archbishop himself would have been at risk of imprisonment. He later clarified that their real wedding was the one seen by millions, and anything that happened before was merely a personal exchange of vows, not a legally binding ceremony. Meghan and Harry repeatedly present a version of events that contradicts themselves, whether it's their engagement, their wedding, or their experiences within the royal family. The facts seem to shift, depending on what best serves their narrative at the time. But what happens when their own stories contradict each other? Can they keep rewriting the past, or will the truth catch up? Stay tuned. The never-ending spectacle. Harry and Meghan's selective truth. When the stakes were this high, doesn't it make more sense to hear our story from us? Oh please, give it a rest. What stakes exactly? Are we supposed to believe that a couple living in the lap of luxury in California, cashing in on royal titles they supposedly despise, is somehow fighting for survival?
But then you also shouldn't be wearing the same color as one of the other more senior members of the family.
While people struggle with soaring costs and real-life hardships, Meghan and Harry continue their favorite pastime, playing the perpetual victims. And as for telling their story, haven't they already done that? Over and over again. From the Oprah interview to the explosive memoir Spare to the New York Times features, and now this Netflix documentary, they've been setting the record straight since they fled the UK. But strangely, their version of events keeps shifting. Now, let's talk about that new trailer, because of course there are more tears. Meghan has already demonstrated her remarkable ability to summon them on cue. Remember that moment when she boasted about how she could cry just like that? Convenient, isn't it? It certainly helps when you're crafting a narrative. Then, there's the shameless attempt to invoke Princess Diana's legacy.
Or else, perhaps Harry is more quieter and just watches.
The very same Harry who once raged about the media exploiting his mother for profit is now using her imagery as a promotional tool. Isn't it ironic? He insists he's protecting her memory while using it to generate sympathy for himself. It's as calculated as it is nauseating. And then, to my own surprise, I appeared in their documentary. Yes, me. And I wasn't even being critical. Quite the opposite. But let's be honest, truth has never been a strong suit for this couple. They've built an empire out of grievance, carefully curating their victimhood to keep the money flowing. And that brings us to a bigger question. Why is King Charles still allowing them to hold on to their titles? Strip them away, sever the last ties to the monarchy, and let's see how far they get without them. Because without Duke and Duchess attached to their names, they're just another pair of wealthy socialites with a flair for self-pity. But the real tragedy? The irony is almost unbearable. Harry and Meghan have become the masters of manipulation, trying to rewrite history with every interview, book, and documentary. They gaslight the public, twist reality, and expect everyone to nod along. If the first installment of this $100 million self-indulgent spectacle taught us anything, it's this. The Sussexes wouldn't recognize the truth if it hit them square in the face. But what do you think? Should King Charles finally strip them of their titles? Or is their influence already fading? We'd love to hear your thoughts. So drop a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
It happened a few weeks ago, early this month, here at our cottage.